A single hug from a kind waitress changes everything for a disabled boy and sets off a chain of events that will transform her life forever. James was a man used to control. Everything in his life had a plan, a schedule, a goal. As a billionaire, he had built his empire through sheer determination, sharp mind, and sometimes an iron fist. Business meetings, contracts, numbers, and power filled his days. He was respected, even feared in the corporate world. But at home, life was different. His son, Ethan, was everything James held close to his heart. Ethan was born with a physical disability that made walking and moving difficult, but it never dimmed the boy's spirit. Despite his challenges, Ethan had a smile that could light up a room, a laugh that was pure and honest, and a curiosity that made him see the world in ways most adults couldn't. James loved him deeply, though showing affection was sometimes awkward for a man who was more comfortable with business than emotions. One morning, James decided to take Ethan out of their routine. He wanted a change, a small adventure that would give them time together outside the walls of their mansion and the confines of James's controlled life. He wanted Ethan to experience something simple yet meaningful, a small restaurant where people served food not because they had to, but because they cared. The place James chose was a quaint diner in a quiet part of town. It was the kind of place where the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes greeted you the moment you walked in. Wooden tables were polished from years of use, and sunlight poured through big windows, reflecting off glass jars filled with sugar and candies on the counter. It was far from the luxury James was used to, but he hoped it would give Ethan a different kind of joy, kind of warmth that money could never buy. As they entered, Ethan's eyes widened. He loved small, cozy places with friendly faces. The moment felt magical to him. The chime of the door announced their arrival, and the smell of syrup and toast filled the air. Ethan clung slightly to his father's hand, but seemed excited to explore this new place. James watched quietly, analyzing, observing, yet also secretly hoping Ethan would relax and enjoy himself. They walked to an empty booth by the window, and James helped Ethan get settled in his seat. Soon after, a young waitress approached them. Her name was Lily. She had soft brown hair tied back in a ponytail, a kind face that seemed to welcome everyone, and eyes that sparkled with a mix of curiosity and warmth. She greeted them with a smile that was genuine, not the practiced one you sometimes saw in more upscale places. "Good morning. How are you today?" she asked, kneeling slightly to be at eye level with Ethan. Ethan's eyes lit up immediately. He didn't respond verbally at first, but his small hand reached out toward her. Lily took it gently, holding it for a moment as if acknowledging not just a customer, but a human being who deserved kindness and attention. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged him. Not a quick, polite hug, but a careful, sincere one. She bent down, wrapped her arms around him, and held him just long enough for him to feel safe and cherished. Ethan smiled, a soft, shy smile, and rested his head against her shoulder for a moment before pulling back. James stood a few feet away, pretending to look at the menu, but he couldn't take his eyes off Lily. In that single gesture, he saw something he had rarely seen in his world: pure compassion. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care about his money or his status. She simply saw a boy who needed a moment of warmth, and she gave it without hesitation. James felt a mix of emotions. He wasn't used to surprise admiration, even a little guilt. He realized that in his life of wealth and control, moments like this were rare. Lily smiled at Ethan again and asked gently, "Would you like to pick something from the menu?" Ethan nodded eagerly, pointing at a picture of pancakes with syrup and strawberries. Lily knelt down again to take his order personally. James watched quietly, fascinated by how natural she was with him. There was no rush, no irritation, just patience and genuine interest. Ethan's eyes followed her every movement, and a small laugh escaped him when she made a funny face while taking his order. The rest of the diner seemed to fade for James. He wasn't thinking about contracts or meetings or the stock market. He was thinking about Lily. He was thinking about how rare it was to find someone who could connect so easily with another human being. Someone who didn't judge, who didn't care about money, who simply saw the goodness in people. And more importantly, He was thinking about how happy she made his son feel. When the food arrived, Ethan was delighted. Lily brought it to the table with a cheerful attitude, making sure everything was just the way he liked it. She asked small questions like whether he wanted extra syrup or if he liked the strawberries. Ethan responded with little nods and gestures, enjoying the attention. James, still observing, felt a strange sense of relief. Seeing Ethan laugh and engage with someone else brought him a quiet joy that he rarely experienced as Ethan ate. James struck up a small conversation with Lily, trying to hide how intrigued he was. He asked simple questions about the diner, about her work, about life in the small town. Lily answered politely, but she also spoke with a warmth that made James want to know more. Her voice had a calmness, a steady kindness, that made him feel unexpectedly at ease. He realized that she treated everyone with the same level of respect and care, not just his son. By the time Ethan finished his meal, he was smiling more than he had all week. He reached out to Lily again and gave her a small hug before they left. James watched silently, feeling an unfamiliar mix of gratitude and admiration. That small moment, a simple hug, had shifted something inside him. He realized that no amount of money could buy the kind of kindness and human connection that Lily had shown. As they walked out of the diner, James held Ethan's hand tightly, his mind racing. He knew that this was only the beginning. There was something about Lily that had caught his attention, something rare and real in a world that often felt cold and transactional. He didn't know exactly what it meant yet, but he knew he wanted to see how she treated people, see how she lived her life, see if her kindness could extend beyond the walls of that small diner. And Ethan, unaware of the thoughts swirling in his father's mind, simply held on to the happiness he had felt in those moments, the warmth of a hug that made him feel seen and loved. That simple act had created a memory he would cherish, and for James, it had planted the seed of curiosity, respect, and perhaps even admiration for the waitress who had unknowingly touched both their lives in a way that neither money nor power could ever achieve by the end of the day. James knew one thing: their visit to the diner was not just a meal. It was the start of something unexpected, something meaningful, and something that would change all their lives in ways he had never imagined. After their first visit to the diner, James found himself thinking about Lily more than he expected. It wasn't just her kindness toward Ethan. It was the way she moved through the world. She carried herself with a quiet strength, as if life had tested her many times, and she had passed with grace. James rarely noticed such qualities in people around him. In his world, most interactions were measured by status, money, and influence. Lily had none of that, and yet somehow, she held a power that was entirely different, a power of warmth, empathy, and authenticity. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't stop talking about her. Every morning, he would ask if they could go back to the diner. "Please, Dad, can we go see Lily today?" he would say, his face lighting up with hope and excitement. James smiled at the boy's eagerness. Realizing that Lily had become a bright spot in Ethan's life, a source of joy that money could never provide. So over the next few weeks, James made small trips to the diner with Ethan, careful to keep them simple and relaxed. Lily began to recognize them. At first, she was polite but neutral, used to seeing customers come and go. But she quickly noticed something different about Ethan. He wasn't like the other children who sometimes came in with their parents. He was curious, observant, and had a gentle way of interacting with people. She found herself drawn to his innocence and joy, and she couldn't help but show him extra attention, not because she expected anything in return. But because she genuinely cared, Ethan started opening up more. He would tell Lily about his favorite books, his love for drawing, and small details about his life that most adults wouldn't have the patience to listen to. Lily listened with full attention, kneeling or leaning in so he could speak comfortably. She laughed at his jokes, encouraged him when he tried new words, and made little gestures like letting him stir his own cup of chocolate milk or arranging the pancakes. In a smiley face that made him feel proud and special, James watched quietly, often from a distance, marveling at the effect she had on his son. Outside the diner, Lily's life was far from easy. She was a single mother, raising her young daughter, Mia, on her own. Bills piled up faster than she could pay them, and the rent always seemed just out of reach. She worked long hours at the diner, sometimes staying late to cover shifts or help out colleagues. Despite her exhaustion, she never let it show to customers, maintaining a cheerful and professional demeanor. She had dreams of providing a better life for Mia, of giving her opportunities that she herself never had. Yet every day felt like a struggle, a careful balancing act between survival and hope. James began to notice little things about Lily that went beyond her kindness toward Ethan. He saw how she treated other customers, always with patience and respect, even when they were rude or impatient. He noticed how she remembered small details about people, asking about family members, or checking in on someone who seemed down. He realized that this wasn't just a job for her, it was a way of living, a way of touching lives in small but meaningful ways. The more he watched, the more he admired her. One afternoon, as they arrived at the diner, James noticed Lily looking tired. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her usually bright smile was a little subdued. Ethan, unaware of the adult worries around him, ran up to her with a cheerful greeting. "Hi, Lily. Guess what I drew today?" he exclaimed, holding up a small picture of a rainbow. Lily's face softened immediately. She knelt to his level, taking the drawing carefully, and praised him with genuine enthusiasm. "This is beautiful, Ethan. You're such a talented artist," she said. The sparkle returned to her eyes, even if just for a moment. James watched this exchange, realizing that small gestures like these were part of her daily life, small moments of care that made the world better. One person at a time. As weeks passed, a subtle tension developed inside James. He was a man used to control, used to having the means to fix problems quickly. Yet with Lily, he felt uncertain. She had no idea who he was. She treated him and Ethan like any other customer, without flattery or suspicion. He wanted to help her, to ease her burdens. But he didn't know how to approach her without overwhelming her or revealing his world too soon. At the same time, he couldn't deny the admiration he felt. There was something rare and real about her. Something that his wealth and influence had never been able to buy. Ethan, blissfully unaware of these complicated adult thoughts, continued to build his bond with Lily. He looked forward to each visit, counting the hours until he could see her again. Sometimes he would sit in the booth with his crayons, drawing little pictures for her. Lily would hang them up near the counter, a small gallery of his work, which made him beam with pride. He felt seen, appreciated, and valued more than he ever did anywhere else. And James noticed this happiness in his son. It was different from any toy, gadget, or trip he could buy. It was pure, simple joy rooted in human connection. Meanwhile, life outside the diner continued to challenge Lily. One day her car broke down on the way to a grocery store. She walked home carrying bags of food in her arms, exhausted and frustrated. Yet the next morning, she was at the diner again, smiling and serving customers as if nothing had happened. James noticed these small sacrifices, the quiet resilience that Lily displayed every day. He began to feel a mix of admiration and concern, wishing he could help without disrupting her life or making her feel uncomfortable. One particular day, Ethan had a small accident at the diner. He tried to reach for a syrup bottle on the counter and it tipped over, spilling sticky liquid across the table. Lily reacted instantly, calming Ethan with a gentle touch and reassuring words. She cleaned up the mess with patience, making him feel safe and understood. James observed, his heart swelling with gratitude. He realized that Lily had a rare gift, not just for kindness, but for understanding the small, delicate needs of others. In that moment, he understood why Ethan was so drawn to her. The more James watched, the more he noticed the small, invisible threads that connected Lily to the people around her. She wasn't flashy or showy. She didn't seek attention or praise. She simply lived her life in a way that touched others quietly but profoundly. And for James, who had always measured life in numbers, achievements, and influence, this was eye-opening. He began to see a world beyond power and wealth, a world where a simple act of kindness could create ripples that no money could ever achieve. James also noticed how Lily's presence seemed to bring out the best in Ethan. The boy's confidence grew. His laughter was freer and his sense of curiosity expanded. She asked him questions, encouraged him to speak his mind, and celebrated his small victories. In her presence, Ethan felt capable and valued, not limited by his disability. And that, more than anything, touched James deeply by now. James realized he couldn't ignore the impact Lily had on both Ethan and himself. He found himself planning their diner visits not just for Ethan's happiness, but also because he wanted to see more of her, understand the woman who had brought such light into their lives. But he remained cautious, knowing that any sudden display of wealth or influence could scare her or make her feel uncomfortable. He had to find a way to appreciate her and support her without overwhelming her world. In the evenings, James would reflect on the day, thinking about Lily and her quiet strength. He considered the sacrifices she made, the love she showed his son, and the resilience she displayed despite her struggles. Each thought made him respect her more, and a small idea began to form in his mind that perhaps he could find a way to help her, to make her life easier without changing who she was at her core. Lily, meanwhile, began to notice James's subtle attentions. She sensed that he was different from the other customers. He watched carefully, listened quietly, and never imposed. But she didn't know why. She didn't know he was a billionaire, or that he had the power to change her life with a single decision. To her, he was a polite, attentive man who cared about his son and observed the world with quiet thoughtfulness. As the weeks passed, the bond between Ethan and Lily strengthened. Every visit to the diner was an adventure for him, a chance to be seen and celebrated. James continued to watch silently, captivated by the genuine connection unfolding before him. He realized that some of the most important moments in life were not measured by wealth, power, or status, but by the simple, meaningful bonds we form with others. And so, the quiet routine of diner visits continued, creating a small but profound world where kindness, empathy, and human connection thrived. Ethan found joy, Lily found purpose, and James discovered a new appreciation for the beauty of selfless care. Unbeknownst to all of them, these small moments were laying the foundation for a much larger story, one that would soon challenge their perceptions, test their hearts, and ultimately change their lives forever. As time went on, the small world of the diner began to feel more like a second home for Ethan. He loved being there, loved seeing Lily, loved the little rituals they had developed. James noticed this happiness in his son and found himself smiling in ways he rarely did. But life, as it often does, had a way of complicating even the simplest joys. One afternoon, as James and Ethan arrived at the diner, James noticed that Lily seemed unusually distracted. She was polite as always, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her movements were a little hurried, almost nervous. James observed quietly from their usual booth, wondering what could be wrong. He noticed a man at the counter speaking harshly to her about an order he claimed was wrong. Lily handled it with patience, apologizing for the mistake and quickly correcting it. But James saw the tension in her shoulders. Ethan, oblivious to adult concerns, chirped happily as he greeted Lily. "Hi, Lily. Look at the picture I drew for you today," he exclaimed, holding up a drawing of a small garden with flowers and a rainbow. Lily's eyes softened, and she leaned down to take it. "This is wonderful, Ethan. You have such a talent," she said warmly, but James noticed a flicker of strain in her eyes as she glanced at the man at the counter. After the customer left, Lily came over to take their order. "Sorry about that," she murmured quietly, almost to herself. James caught the tone and realized that her life outside the diner must be heavy. There was so much more behind her warm smile than anyone could see. James, who was used to solving problems with money or influence, suddenly felt powerless. He didn't want to intrude, but he also couldn't ignore what he was beginning to notice, the struggle that Lily faced every day just to keep going. Ethan finished his meal happily, unaware of the tension, and James decided to strike up a conversation with Lily, trying to be casual but also gentle. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Lily paused, considering how much to reveal. "It's just been a busy week," she admitted. "Some personal things, bills, family. You know how it is." James nodded, understanding more than she realized. He had spent a lifetime managing challenges, and he could see the resilience in her eyes. She was carrying so much, yet she never let it show fully to anyone. Over the next few days, things started to shift. Lily's struggles began to spill over in subtle ways. She was late to a shift once because her daughter, Mia, was sick. Another day, she seemed distracted while serving customers, her hands shaking slightly as she carried plates. James noticed all of it, but he also noticed something else: her strength. Despite everything, she'd never let Ethan or any of the other customers feel her stress. She remained cheerful, attentive, and kind, even when exhaustion and worry weighed her down. Ethan, however, began sensing something was different. One morning, he tugged at James's sleeve and whispered, "Dad, Lily looks sad today. Can we do something?" James felt a pang of guilt. He wished he could solve everything, but he also didn't want to overwhelm her. Instead, he smiled gently at Ethan and said, "We'll see what we can do." But even as he said it, he realized he was already thinking of ways to help her. Ways to ease her burdens without shocking her with the reality of who he was. One day, a misunderstanding occurred that tested the delicate balance of their small friendship. James had been watching from a distance as Lily accidentally spilled a drink near Ethan's booth. She apologized quickly, but in the rush to clean up, she brushed past James's shoulder. "Sorry," she said, not realizing he had seen it. In the moment, James felt a flash of irritation. In his world, accidents like this would have been unacceptable, something that needed immediate correction. But then he looked at Ethan, who was laughing at the small puddle, finding joy in the chaos. James's irritation faded as quickly as it came, replaced by a strange mixture of admiration and concern. Yet the incident left a small crack in their interactions. James, used to control, felt frustrated that he couldn't manage every situation perfectly. Lily, busy with her own struggles, remained unaware of his scrutiny. The tension, though subtle, began to grow between them. James wondered if he was overstepping by paying such close attention. He reminded himself that Lily didn't need him. She was strong and capable, but at the same time, he couldn't ignore the urge to protect her, to somehow make her life easier. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to bond with Lily, showing no awareness of the tension between the adults. He would draw pictures, ask questions, and giggle at her jokes, his happiness infectious. Lily, despite her own worries, found herself looking forward to his visits. She was touched by his innocence and his genuine affection, which reminded her of what life could be when it wasn't weighed down by stress and struggle. One evening, after closing time, James stayed behind at the diner, watching as Lily cleaned tables and straightened chairs. The exhaustion on her face was clear, but so was her determination. She moved efficiently, never complaining, always ensuring that everything was in order for the next day. James realized then that her strength wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and unwavering. It was the kind of strength that didn't ask for recognition but deserved it more than most. The following week brought another challenge. Lily received a notice that her rent was overdue, and she had no immediate way to pay. She tried to hide the worry, but James noticed her glancing anxiously at her phone as she served tables. He felt a strong urge to intervene, to solve this problem for her in the way he would in his own world, but he hesitated. He didn't want to shock her or make her feel uncomfortable. He wanted to help, but he wanted it to be genuine and thoughtful. It's not overwhelming. Ethan, sensing Lily's worry, became unusually quiet. He sat in their booth, fidgeting with his hands, and looked up at James with concern. "Dad, is Lily okay?" he asked softly. James patted his son's shoulder and whispered, "We'll make sure she's okay. Don't worry." Even as he said it, he began to plan ways to subtly ease her burdens, to support her without revealing the full extent of his wealth or influence. During this time, James also started noticing how Lily interacted with other people. She was always polite and professional, even to difficult customers. She remembered details about their lives, asked about their families, and offered small acts of kindness: a cup of coffee on the house for someone having a bad day, a comforting word for a parent stressed about their children. James realized that her generosity extended far beyond Ethan. She had a natural ability to touch lives, to make people feel valued and cared for, even when her own life was difficult. One afternoon, as James watched, a man approached the counter and became rude to Lily, complaining loudly about his order. Lily handled it calmly, apologized sincerely, and corrected the mistake without raising her voice. James felt a surge of respect and admiration. In his world, people often reacted with anger or defensiveness when challenged. Lily's patience and composure were extraordinary. She didn't let the negativity affect her. She treated every person with dignity. At the same time, James felt a growing desire to help her. He wanted to make her life easier, to relieve some of the pressures she carried every day. But he also worried about the consequences. He didn't want to impose his world on hers or disrupt the balance she had created. He realized that the best way to help might be subtle, quiet, and in direct ways that wouldn't make her feel dependent or uncomfortable. Ethan, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of the complexities surrounding Lily. He continued to enjoy their visits, laughing, drawing, and sharing stories. He trusted her completely and had no fear of judgment. His innocence and pure joy reminded James of the importance of human connection, of kindness that comes without conditions or expectations. One evening, as they left the diner, James reflected on everything he had observed over the past few weeks. Lily was remarkable, not just for her kindness toward Ethan, but for the strength, patience, and generosity she showed to everyone around her. He realized that she had created a small world of warmth and care in the middle of her struggles. And it was a world that had already touched his family profoundly, but he also knew that life was not easy for her. The bills, the responsibilities, the exhaustion, they were real, pressing, and unrelenting. And yet, despite it all, Lily never let it break her spirit or compromise the care she showed others. James began to think about ways he could help her, ways to ease her burdens without taking away her independence or her dignity. He wanted to support her, to protect her, and to ensure that her kindness and strength could continue to thrive. And so, the delicate balance of their relationships continued. Ethan found joy in friendship. Lily found purpose and appreciation. And James found admiration and respect for a woman who lived in a world so different from his own. The bond between them deepened. Even as challenges arose, misunderstandings occurred, and the realities of life tested their connections. Little did they know, the challenges and misunderstandings were only the beginning. The coming days would test their patience, their trust, and their courage. Secrets would emerge, misunderstandings would grow, and the strength of their bonds would be pushed to its limits. But through it all, the lessons of kindness, empathy, and resilience would remain, guiding them through the challenges and shaping the choices that lay ahead. James could no longer ignore what he had been witnessing over the past weeks. Lily's life, full of quiet struggles and relentless effort, had begun to weigh heavily on him. He had watched her face exhaustion, financial stress, and personal worry every day. And though she hid it well, James knew she deserved relief, even if she didn't realize it herself. Yet he wanted to approach the situation carefully. He had learned that people like Lily, who gave so much of themselves, could feel embarrassed or uncomfortable if someone intervened suddenly. He wanted to help in a way that respected her independence, a way that would ease her burdens quietly, almost magically. Without taking away the dignity she carried so naturally, one morning James decided to take subtle action. He had been tracking her daily life, observing small clues about her struggles late nights, constant multitasking, and small worries she tried to hide. That day, he arranged for a mechanic to fix her car, which had been giving her trouble for weeks. The repair was handled anonymously, and when Lily returned to her car after her shift, she was shocked to find it working perfectly. She had no idea who had helped her, but she felt a sudden lightness in her step, a relief she hadn't expected. James watched from a distance, seeing her smile break through her usual fatigue, and he felt a deep satisfaction. Even without revealing himself, he had made a real difference in her life. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to grow closer to Lily. Every visit to the diner became an adventure. He would talk about his drawings, share small stories about school, or ask her opinion on tiny questions that mattered only to him. Lily responded with patience, laughter, and encouragement, never letting her own worries overshadow the joy she found in interacting with him. James noticed the way Ethan's face lit up around her, how his confidence and happiness seemed to blossom in her presence. He realized that the bond she shared with his son was extraordinary, and he felt increasingly grateful for it as the weeks went by. James continued to find ways to subtly help Lily without revealing his identity. He took care of small debts she had, ensuring bills were paid on time. He left envelopes with grocery gift cards anonymously at the diner's front desk. He even arranged for some of her work equipment to be upgraded, quietly improving her daily routine. Lily, puzzled but grateful, began to notice small changes in her life that she couldn't explain. She felt relief from the pressure that had weighed on her shoulders for so long, yet she didn't know who to thank. Each anonymous act lifted her spirits and gave her hope that life could become a little easier, even in her difficult circumstances. One afternoon, Ethan and Lily shared a quiet moment in the diner's small seating area. He had brought her a drawing he had made of a garden filled with bright flowers and sunshine. "I made this for you, Lily," he said shyly, holding it out with both hands. Lily knelt down to his level, her eyes softening with genuine affection. "Thank you, Ethan. This is beautiful," she said. "I'll hang it somewhere I can see it every day." The smile on Ethan's face was priceless, a mix of pride and happiness, and James felt a surge of warmth in his chest. He realized that these small, sincere interactions were more valuable than any luxury he had ever provided in his life. Eventually, James decided that it was time to reveal himself, but he wanted to do it in a way that felt natural, gentle, and sincere. He invited Lily to a small outing with him and Ethan, under the pretext of a family event that required nothing more than a casual presence. Lily, unaware of James's true identity, agreed out of politeness and curiosity. She had no idea that this outing would change everything. As they arrived at a quiet park near the city, Ethan ran ahead, laughing and exploring the playground. Lily watched him with a smile, enjoying the simple joy of the moment. James stayed back, observing the interaction with a careful eye. He had arranged the outing so that Ethan would be comfortable and Lily would feel appreciated without pressure. When he finally stepped forward to speak to her, he did so with honesty and respect. "Lily," he began, "there's something I need to tell you. Everything you've been experiencing lately, the anonymous help. The improvements in your life, fit was me." Lily froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked at him, trying to understand. "You what?" she whispered. James continued gently, explaining that he had been watching her quietly, admiring her strength, her kindness, and the way she cared for others, especially Ethan. He told her that he wanted to help, not because of obligation, but because he genuinely respected and valued her as a person. Lily listened, her mind racing, unable to fully process the revelation. She had imagined help coming from various sources, but never from the man standing in front of her, wealthy, powerful, and completely unknown to her until this moment. Ethan, sensing the tension, ran to both of them, tugging at Lily's hand. "See, Lily? I told you things would be okay," he exclaimed, laughing. Lily looked down at him, her heart full of emotion. She realized that James's intervention had been guided not just by wealth or power, but by genuine care and attention to the details of her life. It wasn't a random act. It was thoughtful, deliberate, and considerate. As the day went on, Lily began to feel a mixture of awe, gratitude, and disbelief. She had always worked hard, never expecting help, and never imagining that someone from such a different world would notice her struggles and step in to make things better. She realized that James had not only provided practical support, but had also validated her efforts, her resilience, and her kindness. It was a moment that left her humbled and inspired. Over the following days, their interactions began to shift. Lily still worked at the diner, but there was a new sense of ease in her life. Some of her most pressing worries had been alleviated, and she could focus on the things that mattered most to her, her daughter, her work, and the small joys of daily life. James continued to be careful, offering support without overshadowing her independence. He admired her even more, seeing how gracefully she adapted to the subtle changes he had introduced. Ethan, of course, remained the center of it all. His happiness and comfort around Lily had grown even stronger, and he thrived in the newfound stability and support that had quietly entered their lives. James watched as his son laughed, played, and shared his thoughts without hesitation, realizing that Lily's presence had a transformative effect not just on him, but on the entire family dynamic. As weeks turned into months, James and Lily developed a deeper understanding of each other. They shared conversations about life, challenges, and dreams. James discovered the depth of Lily's compassion, her ability to care for others, even when she had little for herself. Lily began to see James not just as a wealthy man, but as someone who genuinely understood her world, respected her boundaries, and admired her resilience. A subtle bond began to form between them, built on mutual respect, admiration, and shared experiences with Ethan. It was a connection that went beyond wealth or status. It was rooted in genuine care and recognition of each other's humanity. James realized that helping Lily had done more than ease her burdens. It had enriched his own life, teaching him lessons about patience, empathy, and the quiet power of kindness. One evening, as they sat together watching Ethan play in the park, Lily finally spoke, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You've changed so much in my life, and I don't even know what to say." James smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "You deserve every bit of it. I just wanted to make things easier for you, that's all." Lily looked at him, understanding not just his words but the thought and care behind them. She felt a sense of relief, comfort, and even hope that she hadn't felt in years. James realized that the small, deliberate steps he had taken to help her had worked. He had made a difference without overwhelming her world, and in return, he had gained a profound respect and admiration for a woman who had touched his family's life in ways he couldn't have imagined. Ethan, exhausted from play but still smiling, ran into Lily's arms for a hug. James watched silently, feeling the warmth and connection that had brought them all together. He realized that life's most meaningful moments were often the simplest ones: hug, a smile, an act of kindness. And in that quiet, ordinary afternoon, James saw how much impact one person could have on another. How love and compassion could change lives quietly but profoundly. By the end of the day, the world felt different. Lily's life had shifted in ways she could not fully articulate. James had found a new appreciation for human connection and kindness. Ethan had found joy and comfort in someone who cared deeply for him. And together, they were beginning to form a bond that promised support, understanding, and perhaps even love. It was a turning point, a moment when all three realized that life could be richer, warmer, and more meaningful when people looked out for each other, not with expectation, but with genuine care and empathy. Life began to settle into a new rhythm for James, Ethan, and Lily. The quiet acts of kindness James had arranged had slowly transformed Lily's world. Her days no longer carried the same level of constant worry and stress. Bills that once piled up now had solutions. Her car worked reliably. Her basic needs were being met in ways that left her free to focus on her work, her daughter, and the small joys she loved. She noticed the improvements but could hardly believe that someone had been paying attention so closely. And when she learned it was James, she was stunned. It was difficult to reconcile the man who had so much power and wealth with the humble, kind-hearted person who had quietly changed her life. Ethan, of course, was delighted. He continued to grow more confident, more expressive, and more curious about the world. He often hugged Lily, laughed at her jokes, and proudly showed her his drawings. She hung each new picture near the counter of the diner, forming a small gallery that spoke to the joy and innocence of a child who had felt valued and seen. James watched these moments closely, feeling warmth and pride as he saw the happiness in his son's eyes. The way Lily nurtured and encouraged Ethan had transformed not just his moods, but his whole outlook on life. The bond between James and Lily also deepened. At first, their interactions had been cautious, careful, and polite, but over time, trust began to grow. Lily began to see James as more than just a wealthy man who could solve problems. She saw someone who genuinely cared, someone who observed and respected her strength and resilience without trying to take over or control her life. For James, Lily represented a kind of authenticity he rarely encountered in his world, a woman who lived with integrity, who worked hard, and who radiated kindness without expectation. He found himself drawn to her not because of beauty or charm alone, but because of the rare combination of strength and compassion she displayed every day. One afternoon, James suggested a small outing for just the three of them. They visited a quiet park, with wide-open spaces where Ethan could run freely and explore without restriction. Lily laughed as Ethan darted from one playground structure to another, his joy contagious. James watched her laugh, noticing the lightness in her expression, the absence of worry that had so often clouded her face. For the first time, it was clear to him that the life he had quietly helped improve was beginning to bloom in its own way. During that outing, they talked more openly than ever before. Lily shared stories of her childhood, of the struggles she had faced as a single mother, and of her dreams for the future. James listened attentively, offering support not as a man of power, but as someone who genuinely wanted to understand her life. He shared small glimpses of his own world too, not in a boastful way, but to help her see that despite differences in wealth and status, their experiences of struggle, worry, and love were universal. This mutual sharing created a foundation of trust and understanding that allowed them to connect on a deeper level. Ethan, sensing the bond forming between them, grew even more attached to Lily. He was free to express himself completely, knowing that both his father and Lily were there to support him. He began to explore new interests, drawing more complex pictures, asking questions about the world, and even showing small signs of bravery that James hadn't noticed before. Lily celebrated these small victories with him, praising him, laughing with him, and encouraging him. It was a nurturing environment that had previously been missing from his life. As the days passed, Lily began to adjust to the new stability in her life. She no longer had to worry constantly about paying bills or fixing her car. She had the freedom to focus on her daughter, her work, and her personal growth. She felt a sense of relief she hadn't experienced in years, and it was accompanied by a quiet gratitude toward James. She began to trust that his help was genuine, motivated by concern and admiration rather than obligation or control. This trust allowed her to relax in a way that had been impossible before, and it strengthened the bond between them further. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, James, Lily, and Ethan sat together on a park bench. Ethan was tired but content, resting against Lily as she read aloud a small storybook. James watched them, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that the small, deliberate actions he had taken to help Lily had rippled outward, creating a world in which Ethan thrived, Lily found stability, and he himself discovered a new appreciation for empathy and kindness. It was a transformation that went beyond material wealth. It was about connection, understanding, and shared human experience. In the following weeks, James and Lily continued to spend time together, gradually building a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. They shared quiet moments, helping each other navigate challenges while celebrating joys. James admired Lily's resilience, patience, and ability to see goodness in people despite hardships. Lily, in turn, admired James's thoughtfulness, intelligence, and the care he had taken to help without imposing. Their relationship became a blend of friendship, respect, and a growing warmth that neither had expected but both valued deeply. Ethan thrived in this environment. He continued to grow emotionally and socially, feeling safe and loved. The encouragement and attention he received from Lily helped him develop confidence in his abilities. James, watching his son flourish, felt a sense of pride and relief. He realized that the happiness of his child was not something money could buy, it was something nurtured through patience, attention, and love. Lily had provided that nurturing in a way that James could not. For that, he was profoundly grateful. The small diner continued to be a place of connection and joy. Lily still worked there, but now her days carried less weight and more possibility. She smiled more freely, laughed more often, and interacted with customers with a lighter heart. The changes in her life allowed her to focus on what mattered most: her daughter, her work, and her personal growth, while still maintaining the warmth and kindness that had drawn Ethan and James to her in the first place. One afternoon, Lily confided in James about her dreams for the future. She wanted to provide a better life for her daughter, explore new opportunities, and give back to her community. James listened carefully, supporting her goals and offering guidance without overshadowing her independence. He recognized that the real value of his help was not simply in removing immediate struggles, but in empowering her to pursue her own path. His support had created stability, but her strength, courage, and determination were what would carry her forward. The transformation in their lives became increasingly visible. Ethan's laughter filled the spaces they inhabited. Lily's smile grew more radiant and confident, and James felt a deeper sense of fulfillment than he had ever known. The connection between the three of them strengthened with each passing day, rooted not in wealth or status, but in kindness, trust, and shared experience. It was a bond that promised resilience and joy, a family of choice built from genuine care rather than circumstance. Eventually, the community began to notice Lily's renewed energy and the changes in her demeanor. Customers commented on her cheerful attitude. Colleagues admired her composure and patience, and friends saw a woman who had found balance and hope despite the challenges she faced. James, watching quietly, felt a sense of satisfaction, not in recognition or praise, but in knowing that his discreet support had enabled her to flourish on her own terms. One evening, as they returned from a small outing, Ethan held both James's and Lily's hands, walking between them with a confident step. The sight warmed James's heart. He realized that the journey they had taken together, from quiet struggles, small acts of kindness, and growing bonds, had created a family dynamic filled with love, respect, and shared happiness. It was a life richer than any he had experienced before, one not measured by wealth, but by the connections they had built and the joy they had nurtured. Lily, looking at James and Ethan, felt a profound sense of gratitude and hope. She had faced so many challenges, yet through patience, kindness, and unexpected support, she had found stability and happiness. She realized that her life had changed not because of wealth alone, but because someone had noticed her, believed in her, and acted with care and thoughtfulness. The realization humbled her, inspired her, gave her confidence to embrace the future. James, in turn, reflected on the lessons he had learned. His wealth and influence were tools, yes, but the real transformation had come from understanding, patience, and the willingness to observe, listen, and act with care. He had helped Lily without overwhelming her, empowered Ethan to thrive, discovered a new perspective on life that went beyond numbers and power. For the first time, he understood the value of empathy and human connection in a way that no business deal or achievement could ever teach. Ethan, joyful and secure, continued to thrive. His bond with Lily and his father had created a foundation of love and confidence that would shape him for years to come. He laughed, played, and explored without fear, knowing that he was valued, supported, and loved unconditionally. Lily's presence had given him confidence. James's guidance had given him security, and together they had created an environment where he could grow and flourish. In the end, life settled into a harmonious rhythm. Lily continued her work at the diner, now with a renewed sense of purpose and stability. James balanced his busy life with meaningful time spent nurturing his son and supporting Lily. Ethan thrived in the love and encouragement surrounding him. And together, the three of them created a world in which kindness, empathy, and human connection shaped daily life. Proving that even small acts of care and attention could change lives profoundly, the story closed with a moment of quiet joy. Ethan laughing as he ran ahead, Lily smiling at his antics, and James watching them both, feeling a sense of fulfillment deeper than anything money could buy. Their lives had been changed by compassion, subtle intervention, and genuine care. And in that moment, they understood the true value of connection, family, and the unexpected ways in which kindness could transform the world. In the end, life settled into a harmonious rhythm. Lily continued her work at the diner, now with a renewed sense of purpose and stability. James balanced his busy life with meaningful time spent nurturing his son and supporting Lily. Ethan thrived in the love and encouragement surrounding him. And together, the three of them created a world in which kindness, empathy, and human connection shaped daily life, proving that even small acts of care and attention could change lives profoundly. The story closed with a moment of quiet joy. Ethan laughing as he ran ahead, Lily smiling at his antics, and James watching them both, feeling a sense of fulfillment deeper than anything money could buy. Their lives had been changed by compassion, subtle intervention, and genuine care. And in that moment, they understood the true value of connection, family, and the unexpected ways in which kindness could transform the world.